So, yeah, Greg, please.
Well, you've hit on two topics near and dear. One is biology and notions of kind of categorization of biology, and the other is wine tasting for obvious reasons. And in both of them, I think issues that come up in what contrasting cases you tend to present are incredibly important. In wine tasting, some of my own work shows that you can see that given an array of features, novices and experts actually seem to start to come upon some of the same categorizations in the world, which can be explained in very Gibsonian terms. Some things we evolved to find salient. And huge differences, did they know it? So cluster group of wines, and experts and novices cluster them in the same ways. Novices know that they're doing it on the basis of grape type, or sorry, experts know it's on grape type, novices might not. Almost certainly don't. In the example you used, just kind of the classification systems, I don't know if you gave them the features and then the kids would check them off, because implicit then in the kinds of features you're identifying is, or at least could be, a certain goal structure. And if you look at the work of Doug Medin, you can show that in fact you might arrive at some very, very different kind of categorization schemes, and you could drive that by having different kinds of, for example, relational features in there, which is a direction that he would go. Different subgroups, different cultural contexts would do these in very different ways.
Yeah, so just as a small clarification on what we did, we definitely had many arguments about how much, whether to explicitly label or have them maybe track down on their own. Say, all right, there are T-Rexes, barnacles, and bonobos. Go on the internet and see what you can find about those. You know, it's sort of the least structured thing. You can't just do pictures because, you know, some of the key things are not shown. And for pragmatic reasons, we felt like we needed to keep it manageable on a card. If you went with a whole page for each, then that turned out to be overwhelming as a classroom activity. But included in the list of kind of lures, things that are not shared, were things that students often think are part of the category that are not part of the category. So things they think all animals have, but actually no, not animals. So you want to have it both be explicitly shown and then refuted. So those were the heuristics we used as we created things. But we definitely had this sense that left on their own, they might all go somewhere in a shared place, but not necessarily the targeted place. Do you guys have anything you want to add? Okay, there we go.
So one thing I noticed across all of your talks is that you had very different ideas of how near and far instance comparison was going to lead to benefits in learning. And so my question is, for each of you, what kinds of learning goals do you think are going to benefit most from near versus far instance transfer? Especially given, you know, the animal example you provided, it seemed like very, very far instance comparison and seemed very contradictory to some of the work that Frederick Gentner was presenting.
Great question. And actually, I agree with Dan that I think both kinds are very useful. We generally like far comparison. The advantage of a far comparison is, number one, of course, it gives you let's say if it's biological, it gives you a big taxonomic range, so you may get diversity out of it. But in terms of analogy, a far comparison means that almost everything is not shared. So what is shared really leaps out. Far comparisons are better if you want people to understand exactly what principle is coming out of the analogy. With a close comparison, it's much more fail-safe in terms of every learner sort of will do it almost automatically. It is its own invitation to compare. You don't have to say, look, these are alike. They're sort of self-comparing and even self-aligning, but the exact reason that they're alike is not so apparent. So they're good for contrast, and they're really good as a starter set. We find in lots of cases, we have this thing we call progressive alignment, where you give kids the comparison you really want them to get, and it completely fails. It's too hard. There's a relational match unsupported by object matches. Those same kids can do that same match if you start them with a close match. So there we use close matches as a route to far matches. But I think that it's absolutely correct that as Dan said, that these give there are different advantages for near and far, and you want to sort of marshal them accordingly.
One of the advantages of the FAR comparisons is that the student experiences the range of situations where an idea might show up. So I've learned to discriminate wine, and I now know what a bright nose is. I may not know that same term applies to milk or something like that. So but if you have like a broader range, FAR comparisons, you begin to see. The difficulty is, the more different the comparisons get, the harder it is to find the similarity. And so you sort of have to balance that. The near comparisons are really good for helping people notice things they might otherwise never notice, right? So go to the museum with your artist friends and they notice these subtle details that you would never see. But if they show little comparisons, it begins to help.
So we had kind of as far as you can go kind of strategy for things that were simpler. Let's go really far, and the key features can be easily listed on a short card, and let's really stretch their minds and take that category as far as it can go. For more processy ideas that had to be embedded in these stories, so they would read one kind of process unfolding in a story and then another process unfolding in the story. Having those be too crazily different ended up being that leap too far for them to sort of see how that's all one thing. So it really, the best one is the one you can just get everyone to make in terms of the FAR.
So I just want to reiterate a point, though, that students need to have the right task orientation towards these things. So we've done studies where you ask them to compare and contrast, and they'll do lots of little comparisons, but it sort of doesn't go anywhere. They really need to be trying to come up with some taxonomy or explanation or visualization, some way to represent the kinds of things they see. So it's Dedry's language thing, that the language helps sort of fix this sort of mass of different perceptual experiences together. If you don't have them do that, it'll just be a lot of chaotic knowledge. So, and that's going to be true for the near and the far.
Just as how that played itself out in, you ship this out, and there's all of these diverse classrooms and contexts. They should have the right orientation. What does that turn into in terms of a set of instructions that you can work? The framing that we had was you do the comparison and contrasting, and then you begin the how come questions. You've got this set now on the board. Well, why do all animals have this and this and this? Begin a little bit of that question. And then that's what the readings are about. You've sort of problematized that shared thing to make it be productive as opposed to a weird activity that you sort of did. You said, oh, that was nice, and now I'm done. So we made it be a routine to help it frame it in a productive way. Joe, should we move to food? Yep. All right. Thank you.